It began as an ordinary evening in Nova Scotia, the kind of evening that so many families in small coastal towns have lived 1,000 times before. The Sullivan family had dinner together: roast chicken, vegetables, and a simple dessert of cookies that Lilly, 6 years old, had begged her mother to bake earlier in the day. Her younger brother, Jack, only 4, had spilled a little juice at the table, but laughed it off, his cheeks flushed with the innocent energy of childhood. Their parents, weary from work but grateful for the warmth of home, looked at their children and felt, as many parents do, that the world outside their doors was dangerous and uncertain, but inside their modest house, everything was safe. That sense of safety would not survive the night. By 8 o'clock, Lilly and Jack had been tucked into bed. The house sat at the edge of a patch of woods where the trees pressed close, their silhouettes sharp against the last traces of winter twilight. The family's dog barked once or twice at something unseen near the tree line, but soon fell quiet. The children's small bedroom was painted a pale yellow, with posters of cartoon characters taped to the walls and a scattering of toys on the floor. Their blankets were warm, their breathing slow, steady, peaceful. The world outside was quiet, too quiet, some would later say. The roads in this part of Nova Scotia do not see much traffic after dark. Streetlights are sparse, and the ocean wind can make the silence feel heavier, as if the night itself is holding its breath. When the parents checked on them at 10, both children were asleep. The door was closed. Nothing seemed unusual. There were no creaks in the hallway, no signs of unease. But sometime between that last glance and the first light of dawn, something changed. Panic set in immediately. Their parents searched every corner of the house, calling their names: closets, basement, the small shed in the yard. Nothing. They ran through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, hoping the children had wandered off in the night, hoping for something rational, something ordinary, but no one had seen them. Theories sprouted instantly, whispered in hushed tones, even as searchers combed the woods. Could the children have left on their own? At 6 and 4 years old, that seemed impossible. The forest around their home was dense, confusing, dangerous. The night had been cold. A 4-year-old could not have gone far alone, not without crying out or leaving a trace. Yet no cries were heard, and no traces were found. Others wondered if someone had taken them, slipping silently into the house during the night, a shadow passing through locked doors without leaving a mark. But if it was an abduction, it was unlike any the community had seen. There were no signs of forced entry, no neighbors reporting strange vehicles, no camera footage from the few security systems in the area. The house had not been disturbed. The children were simply gone. As news spread, fear took hold. Parents in the town clutched their children closer. Doors that had rarely been locked at night were now bolted. The woods, once a playground for young explorers, became a place of suspicion. Rumors grew like weeds. Some swore they had seen a figure near the tree line days earlier. Others whispered about an old man who lived alone down the road, whose reclusive habits now seemed sinister in hindsight. But when police questioned him, nothing concrete tied him to the case. By the end of the first day, helicopters had searched the forests. Dogs had tracked for miles. Divers had scanned nearby lakes and rivers. Nothing. It was as though Lilly and Jack had been erased. The community tried to hold on to hope. Posters with their faces, 2 smiling children with bright eyes, were printed overnight, plastered onto telephone poles, shop windows, church doors. Candlelight vigils were held. Strangers wept with the family, offering prayers, casseroles, donations. The local government announced a reward, $150,000 for any information leading to the safe return of the children. Yet even with money on the table, no one came forward with anything that could be called a lead. And in the silence of those nights that followed, the parents sat awake, replaying every detail of that final evening. Had they missed something? A sound? A shadow? Was there a chance the children were still nearby, alive, waiting to be found? Or had they been taken far away, into the kind of darkness no one dared to imagine? The mystery of Lilly and Jack Sullivan's disappearance was not just another missing persons case. It was something more unsettling, more haunting, because the absence of answers, the sheer void where logic should have been, gnawed at everyone who followed the story. It raised questions about safety, about trust, about how quickly normal life can shatter into horror. This was not a tale of clear footprints in the mud or tire tracks on a dirt road. It was not a story with clues scattered like breadcrumbs waiting to be pieced together. It was a story defined by emptiness. 2 children vanished, and with them, the sense of security of an entire town. Weeks later, the search would continue, dragging across forests, fields, and rivers. The family would endure countless interviews, polygraphs, endless scrutiny from media and police alike. Every word they spoke was dissected, every facial expression judged by strangers on television. And yet, despite all this, nothing changed the fact that no one knew what had happened. For Nova Scotia, for Canada, and for anyone who heard the story, the case of Lilly and Jack became something more than a tragedy. It became a ghost story in real time. A reminder that sometimes the darkest mysteries are not buried in history books or true crime documentaries, but unfold in the lives of ordinary families in quiet towns. And as we step into this story, we must prepare ourselves for a descent, not only into the facts of the case, but into the shadows that surrounded the psychological toll, the fear, the questions without answers. Because when 2 children can vanish from their beds in the middle of the night, leaving no trace behind, we are forced to confront the most unsettling truth of all, that sometimes the monsters we fear do not knock, do not break down doors, do not announce themselves. Sometimes they slip silently into the night and leave only emptiness behind. On the night of their disappearance, nothing seemed unusual at first glance. It was a chilly April evening in Nova Scotia, the type where a stillness lingers in the air, heavy enough to press against the skin. The Sullivan household stood on a quiet street, a modest home surrounded by tall pines that creaked when the wind shifted. Inside, the family had followed their nightly routine: dinner, baths, bedtime stories. By 9 p.m., neighbors recalled the lights dimming, as if another ordinary night had come to a close. But beneath that calm exterior, something deeply unsettling was unfolding. At approximately 10:30 p.m., a neighbor passing by noted something strange. The front door of the Sullivan home was slightly ajar. They thought nothing of it at the time, perhaps assuming one of the parents had stepped outside for a moment. But hours later, when the door remained open, the detail would transform from mundane to chilling. By morning, when the parents went to check on their children, both Lilly and Jack were gone, beds empty, windows closed, no signs of forced entry. The eeriness was magnified by the fact that their favorite stuffed animals and blankets were still in place, as if they had simply evaporated into the night. Investigators combed through the timeline. No one saw the children leave, no vehicles were spotted pulling up to the residence, and the neighborhood dogs known to bark at even the faintest disturbance had remained silent. This silence would soon haunt the investigation, as it suggested something far more sinister. Whoever entered that home and took the children did so with precision, with knowledge of the household's habits, and perhaps even with a chilling level of familiarity. As the story hit the media, Nova Scotia was thrown into a state of unease. Parents clutched their children tighter, schools circulated warnings, and in the shadows of ordinary life, whispers spread. What kind of force could enter a family as sanctuary and erase 2 young children without leaving a single trace? By the 3rd day, the Sullivan case had consumed every corner of the province. Posters with the children's faces appeared in gas stations, grocery stores, and church bulletin boards. Volunteers canvassed the wooded trails and streams that cut through the Nova Scotia landscape, their flashlights cutting through the fog as if trying to pierce the unknown. But despite hundreds of people searching, no credible lead emerged. The community was paralyzed not only by fear but also by suspicion. People began to turn on one another. Neighbors questioned neighbors. Friends whispered about friends. Who among them could have orchestrated such a disappearance? Rumors swirled. Some said the family had enemies. Others claimed it had to be the work of someone close, someone trusted. The media amplified this paranoia, painting the disappearance as not just a tragedy, but a psychological thriller unfolding in real time. Reporters fixated on every possible angle: the unlocked door, the lack of forced entry, the eerily calm demeanor of the parents. The family found themselves under a microscope, their grief picked apart by strangers hungry for answers. Could they be hiding something? Was there a secret feud, debts unpaid, or something darker? This suspicion sowed division. Where once the town had united in warmth, now they splintered into factions, those who defended the family, and those who quietly accused them. In this fog of distrust, the investigation became mired in uncertainty. Instead of clarity, there was only noise, and within that noise, the truth seemed to slip further away. Detectives poured countless hours into interviews, questioning more than 50 individuals connected to the family. Teachers, neighbors, co-workers, distant relatives were grilled for inconsistencies, for cracks in their stories. Yet the puzzle refused to take shape. The lack of evidence became the most haunting evidence of all. Forensics found no fingerprints, no footprints, no fibers out of place. Surveillance cameras in the neighborhood failed to capture anything unusual. Phone records led to dead ends. It was as if the children had been swallowed by the earth itself. This absence of evidence gave rise to unsettling theories. Some investigators whispered about the possibility of an inside job, someone who knew the layout of the house, the children's routines, even the weak points in their parents' vigilance. Others speculated about organized abduction rings, drawing eerie parallels to cases in Europe where children vanished without a trace. The $150,000 reward, meant to incentivize tips, only clouded the waters further. Calls poured in, sightings in Halifax, whispers of a white van, claims of children fitting the description in nearby towns. But every lead collapsed under scrutiny. The investigation wasn't progressing. It was unraveling, splintering into countless false paths, each one darker and more desperate than the last. As weeks turned into months, the Sullivan case transformed into a spectacle. News anchors dissected every detail on nightly broadcasts, while social media birthed an army of amateur sleuths. Entire forums dedicated themselves to solving the case, theorizing about timelines, scrutinizing interviews, and even accusing innocent bystanders of involvement. Some theories grew grotesque. A faction online suggested cult activity, pointing to the eerily ritualistic silence in the abduction. Others claimed it was linked to human trafficking networks, citing patterns in nearby provinces. Still others speculated about paranormal elements. How could two children vanish without leaving behind the faintest clue? This storm of speculation not only distracted from the real investigation, but also inflicted new wounds on the Sullivan family. They became victims twice, once to the disappearance, and again to the character assassinations hurled their way. Yet, perversely, the case thrived in the media for precisely this reason. It was unsolvable, messy, and laced with psychological horror. The absence of answers became its own kind of fascination, one that kept Canadians glued to their screens night after night. Years have now passed since Lilly and Jack Sullivan vanished. The posters are faded, the search parties disbanded, but the absence remains a wound in the fabric of Nova Scotia's collective psyche. The house where they lived still stands, though the family eventually moved away, unable to endure the daily reminder of what they had lost. Neighbors say it feels haunted, not by ghosts, but by a silence too heavy to carry. Every so often the case resurfaces, a new lead emerges, a tip is re-examined, or a documentary revisits the tragedy. But each time, hope rises only to be extinguished again. The $150,000 reward still hangs in the air, untouched, almost mocking in its permanence. The story of Lilly and Jack has become something larger than a crime. It is a reminder of fragility, of how quickly the ordinary can be shattered. It lingers because it has no ending, no closure. And in that void, imagination takes over, crafting countless explanations, each one darker than the last. To this day, the most terrifying detail remains the simplest. Two children went to bed in a safe suburban home, and by morning they were gone. No screams, no struggle, no answers, just silence. And sometimes, silence is the loudest horror of all. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Entre o Destino e Alma channel and watch new stories every week. See you in the next video.